And good morning. Today we're going to start a new unit. This is our Cinderella unit, and we're going to read several stories in the next few weeks that have characters that are similar to Cinderella. And I know most of you are familiar with at least the Disney um, Cinderella character, and that story is based on the original French story written by Charles Perrault. But the story that we're going to read is the original Cinderella, and it's been translated from the French version into English by Marcia Brown, and it is also going to be illustrated by Marcia Brown. So I'm going to go through this slideshow really quickly to show you things that we're going to be doing today. Okay, so that's what the book looks like. So this is our agenda. You should have already reviewed your spelling words and your new fluency words. We're going to look at some grammar, parts of speech, suffixes, and then we're going to read, I'm going to read Cinderella to you, and it is a long story, so please bear with me. Before we start, let's start with suffixes. So suffixes are added to the end of a base word. Okay, we've talked about prefixes before and suffixes. They're added to the end of a base word, like the word eager is the base word, and I could add the suffix ly to the end, and that changes the word to eagerly, and that changes the meaning of the word to describe how eager something is. It does change the meaning of the word. So joy plus the suffix of full makes joyful. Okay, and quick plus the suffix ly makes quickly. The suffix ly means in a certain way, so it describes how. So quickly means in a quick way. Loudly means in a loud way. Okay, it's describing how it's being done. What do you think suddenly means? Yes, it means in a sudden way. The suffix full, F-U-L, means full of. So if I use the word colorful, that means full of color. So if I'm describing like one of your pages that you've colored, I might say, wow, that is very colorful. That means you have used all sorts of colors, not just 2 or 3 colors. And playful means full of play. So you might think of like a baby dog, you know, a puppy or a kitten, and when they're young, they're very playful. They're full of energy and they want to play all the time. So what do you think thankful means? Yes, it means to be full of thanks. Okay, so we're going to add a suffix to the end of each base word, and we're going to draw a line to its new meaning. And this is something I'm not going to be able to do on the screen, but I will talk you through it, okay? So you don't have this page in your packet, and you will be getting your packets on Wednesday. And some things that I go over you won't actually have a page for, and that's okay. So our first word is loud, and we're going to add either full or ly, okay? Well, we already used this as an example. Loud, we can say loudly, and we would say that that would matches up with in a loud way. That describes how. So if I say quietly walk across the room and then you loudly walk across the room, that means you're stomping your feet and making all sorts of noise. Okay. Our next word is color, and we will add full to the end. Okay. Colorful, and that matches up with full of color. Wonder, do we want to use wonderly or wonderful? wonderful, okay? And that matches up with full of wonder. And we have sudden. Do we want to use suddenly or suddenful? Well, I asked you already, what do you think suddenly means? And so we're going to say suddenly, and it means in a sudden way. And then we have the word play, and we're going to use playful, and that means full of play. Okay, here's some words that I just want you to know before we really get into all of this. A fairy tale. There's different elements of a fairy tale, but let me show you. Okay, I'm going to click my screen here, so hopefully I'll be able to. All right, so let me make sure that this is not, hopefully my microphone is still working. These are elements of a fairy tale. Okay, fairy tales usually begin with once upon a time. Okay, and we have done a lot of once upon a time stories. Fairy tales happen in a long time ago. Okay, fairy tales have fantasy and make-believe in them. They usually have some sort of magic in them. Okay. Fairy tales usually have some sort of royalty, princess, prince, kings, queens. Fairy tales have a good and an evil character in them. And I know most of you are familiar with Cinderella. We know that the good character is Cinderella and an evil character is the stepmother. Fairy tales may have some magic, giants, elves, witches, or fairies in them. Okay. Fairy tales have a problem that needs to be solved, and very often it will happen in 3 tries, okay? And fairy tales have happy endings, okay? They all lived happily ever after is a typical ending for a fairy tale. So back to our slides, these are some words that you'll be learning throughout this whole entire unit, not just during Cinderella, but we just discussed what a fairy tale is. Scolded means like when somebody is yelling at you when you're in trouble, or maybe you're not necessarily in trouble, but they're telling you, you know, you're doing something wrong. Miserable means very unhappy, okay? Proud means to be very happy about something. Ashamed would be embarrassed. Culture, we've talked about culture. That's like how we interact with our surroundings and things that we typically do. For instance, in American culture, we celebrate certain holidays and we take summer breaks and we go on vacations, and you know, we like to eat pizza and hamburgers and hot dogs. So it's part of our food culture. And faith, that could mean like your worship or who you believe in to you know, who you believe in. You have to have faith in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. Okay. So our objective, I can identify nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs in a sentence. I'm going to play this video for you. Hopefully this will work on the screen. All right. Okay, so you've just watched a parts of speech video with nouns, verbs, and adjectives in a sentence, and we know that nouns are people, places, or things. Sometimes they're animals or thoughts, okay? And verbs are action words or states of being, okay? And adjectives are words that describe the nouns, okay? And an adverb is a word that describes a verb. Okay, so nouns, again, people, places, or things. This is a rocking chair. That's a thing. a verb. She slams it, okay? So this is an action word, okay? She's slamming the ball. And adjectives describe a noun, and this is the color. So red paint and colors, numbers are also adjectives. And adverbs are soon. They tell you how, when, where, or to what degree. Okay, they describe that verb. So soon would be an adverb. A noun's the name of anything, as house or garden, hoop or swing. Instead of nouns, the pronouns stand, her head, your face, his arm, my hand. Adjectives tell the kind of noun, as great, small, pretty, white, or brown. Verbs tell of something to be done, to read, count, sing, talk, laugh, or run. How things are done, the adverbs tell, as slowly, quickly, ill, or well. And that's a poem. Okay, so now I'm going to read the story Cinderella to you. And I want you to repeat after me. I can list the elements of a fairy tale to identify character traits of the Cinderella story. Okay, so we're going to be looking at character traits, and focus really heavy on the main characters, Cinderella, stepmom, maybe the prince, the stepsisters. We're going to talk about how their behaviors are. We're going to use describing words for them. Okay, this is the story Cinderella, and this is translated and illustrated by Marcia Brown. Okay, and I have some notes in here. I'll probably be asking you some questions throughout the story. Okay. Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a gentleman who took for his second wife the proudest and haughtiest woman that was ever seen. She had 2 daughters who were just like her in every way, bad disposition and all. The husband had a young daughter of his own, but she was sweet and good. She took after her mother, who had been the best in the world. The marriage ceremony was hardly over when the stepmother's temper flared up. She could not abide this young girl, whose goodness made her own daughters seem more hateful than ever. She gave her the vilest household tasks. It was Cinderella who scoured the pots and scrubbed the stairs, Cinderella who polished the bedchamber of Madame and also those of her daughters. Okay, and I did make some notes, some words that we have here. Here's a picture of Cinderella. Okay, and up here it says haughtiest. Okay, that's kind of a high-end person. They're kind of snooty. Okay, very fashionable usually, but they're not very accepting of other people. The word disposition is their manner. Okay, so like the sisters, the stepsisters have bad manners. Okay, they're not very nice. Let's see. When it says down here, where did it go? Her temper flared up. Okay, that means that she got really angry. Okay, so when something flares up, they tend to get like explosive a little bit. You might think of a volcano, like the stepmother, her temper is getting ready to explode. Okay. Let's see, she could not abide this young girl whose goodness made her own daughters, so she did not want to take care of her. She didn't want to be around her. Okay. Vilest household tasks. She gave her the vilest household tasks. And it's like the grossest things, okay? And who scoured the pots and scrubbed the stairs. When she scoured them, that means she sanitized them. Okay, she cleaned them really, she had to scrub real hard. And then a bedchamber is like the bathroom of the madam. Okay. And the bedroom, of course. And here is a picture of a bedroom. Cinderella slept on a wretched straw pallet in a miserable garret away up in the top of the house. Okay, so just a nasty little bed made out of straw, out of hay. Her sisters lay on beds of the latest fashion in fashion chambers with inlaid floors and great mirrors in which they could admire themselves from the tops of their silly heads to the bottoms of their feet. The poor girl put up with everything. She dared not complain, even to her father. He would only have scolded her. Okay, there's that word, scolded. He would have gotten upset with her, because, alas, he was tied hand and foot to his wife's apron strings. When her work was done, Cinderella would creep to the chimney corner and sit there in the ashes, earning for herself the nickname Cinderseat. But her younger stepsister, who was not quite so rude as the elder, gave her the name of Cinderella, and Cinderella she was. In spite of her rags, however, Cinderella was 100 times more beautiful than her sisters, for all their fine clothes. Okay, so they have really nice fancy things, fancy clothes, and Cinderella does not. Okay, here's a picture of Cinderella coming down the stairs. Now, it happened that the king's son was to give a ball. He invited everyone who was anyone, including our 2 young misses, for they cut quite a figure in the land. They were delighted with themselves, busy, as you please, choosing their costumes and headdresses to go with them. More work for Cinderella, for it was she who starched their linen and puffed their ruffles. Chitter-chatter of nothing from morning to night but what they would wear and how they would look. Okay, and here's a picture of the 2 stepsisters getting ready for this ball. I, announced the elder, shall wear my cherry velvet with the English trim. As for me, said the younger, I have nothing but my usual petticoat, but to make up for that, I shall wear my cloak of flowered gold and my diamond circlet, which is not to be sneezed at either. Okay, so she's saying her stuff is just as good as her older sister's stuff. They sent for the best hairdresser to pile their curls into 2 horns, none but the very best. But the best beauty patches would do. They called in Cinderella to ask her advice, for she had very good taste in these matters. Cinderella gave them the best advice in the world and even offered to dress their hair, which of course was what they really wanted in the first place. While she was working over them, they would say to her, Cinderella, now, wouldn't you like to go to the ball? Oh, you are making fun of me. A ball is not for such as I. You are right, Cinderseat, at a ball. How people would laugh, and they laughed themselves at the very thought. Someone else would have made nests of their heads, but not Cinderella. She was good. She dressed them perfectly. The 2 sisters were in such a twitter of excitement that for 2 days they hardly took time to eat. They strained and snapped a dozen corset strings, pulling them too tight in order to shrink their waists. All day long they paraded in front of the looking-glass. Okay, and that is the mirror, okay? So, twitter of excitement. I mean, they're so excited. They don't really realize that anything else is going on around them, okay? And so why do you think Cinderella, though, is being so helpful? I mean, they're being really mean to her, so she really has no reason just to be nice, okay, and help them like this. That's just her nature. That's how she is. So, I could use a character trait that I could use to describe Cinderella is I could describe her as kind. Okay? At last the happy day arrived. They departed, and Cinderella followed them with her eyes as long as she could. When she could no longer make them out, she began to cry. It was all in tears that her godmother found her. "Why, what is the matter, my child? I wish, oh, I wish—" Cinderella was so choked with tears that she could not get her words out. Now Cinderella's godmother was really a fairy. She said to her, "You wish you could go to the ball, is it not so?" "Oh, yes," sighed Cinderella. "Well, just be a good girl," said her godmother. "I'll see that you go." So she took Cinderella into her chamber and said, "Now go into the garden and bring me a pumpkin." Cinderella ran to look for the most beautiful pumpkin she could find and carried it back to her godmother. How on earth could a pumpkin take her to the ball? Cinderella could not guess. Her godmother scooped the pumpkin all out, leaving only the rind. That's the outside, okay? Then she touched it with her wand, and just like that, the pumpkin turned into a beautiful coach, gilded with pure gold. The fairy godmother then went to look for the mouse trap. In it were 6 sprightly mice. She told Cinderella to lift the door of the trap, and as each mouse scampered out, she tapped him with her wand. Each mouse was instantly turned into a handsome, spirited horse, and there, all in all, was a fine set of 6 horses of a beautiful dappled gray mouse. Okay, so the mice came out of the cage, and as they came out, she tapped them with their wand, and they turned into horses. "Now for a coachman. I'll go and see," said Cinderella. "If there is a rat in the rat trap, we can make a coachman out of him." "You are right," said the godmother. "Go see." Cinderella brought the rat trap. In it were 3 plump rats. The fairy chose the one that had the most handsome whiskers. When she touched him with her wand, there was a sleek coachman with the most elegant mustaches you had ever seen. Then the fairy godmother said to Cinderella, "Go now into the garden. Behind the watering pot you will find 6 lizards. Bring them to me." Cinderella had hardly fetched the lizards when her godmother turned them into 6 footmen, who hopped up behind the carriage in their fancy livery and lace and held on as if they had never done anything else in their lives. Then the fairy said to Cinderella, and here's a picture. "There now, that will take you to the ball. Are you not pleased?" "Oh, yes, but I must go in these rags?" Her fairy godmother had scarcely touched Cinderella with her wand when her rags changed into a gown of gold and silver, embroidered with rubies, pearls, and diamonds. Then she gave her a pair of little glass slippers, the prettiest in the whole world. Thus arrayed, Cinderella climbed into the coach, but her godmother charged her above all, "Do not stay a moment after midnight. If you do, your coach will turn back into a pumpkin, your horses into mice, your footmen into lizards, and your riches into rags." Cinderella promised her godmother that she would not fail to leave the ball before midnight. Away she went, beside herself with joy. Okay, so think about this. There were some rules that Cinderella was given. Okay, think about the rules, just like there were rules in Little Red Riding Hood. Okay, remember she told her not to stay a moment past midnight or all these things will be undone. Okay. Now when the king's son learned that a grand princess, whom no one knew at all, had just arrived at the palace, he ran out to receive her. He offered her his hand as she alighted from the coach, and led her into the ballroom, where all the company was assembled. Then a deep silence fell over the room. Everyone stopped dancing. The violins stopped playing. All eyes turned to the great beauty of this mysterious one. Only a low murmur rippled over the gathering. "Oh, how beautiful she is!" And here they all are in the ballroom. The king himself, old as he was, could not take his eyes off her, and whispered in a low voice to the queen that it had been a long time since he had seen anyone so charming and beautiful. The ladies were busy studying her headdress and her gown in order to have some made just like them the next day. If only they could find stuffs as fine and workmanship as skillful. The young prince conducted Cinderella to the seat of greatest honor and led her out on the floor to dance. She danced with so much grace that people wondered at her more than ever. A very splendid feast was served, but the prince did not taste a mouthful, so intent as was he in gazing at Cinderella. Cinderella went to sit near her stepsisters and paid them 1,000 courtesies. Okay, she gave them a lot of compliments. She shared with them some oranges and lemons, which the young prince had given her. The sisters were completely astonished. They did not recognize her at all. And so why do you think that she would go and share with their stepsisters? She doesn't have to. But again, Cinderella is a kind-hearted person, okay? And maybe she's trying to see if they would recognize her. Suddenly, Cinderella heard the clock chime 11 hours and 3/4. Okay, and in our times, that would be 11:45, 15 minutes till midnight. She immediately made a deep curtsy to the company and hurried off as quickly as she could. So she's following the godmother's rules. When Cinderella got home, she went to look for her godmother and thanked her. Then she told her how she longed to go to the ball the following night. The prince had begged her to come. Okay, so he's going to have another ball. While she was telling her godmother everything that had happened at the ball, the two stepsisters knocked on the door. Cinderella ran to let them in. "How late you are," she said, yawning, rubbing her eyes and stretching as if she had just waked out of a sound sleep. While they were gone, she had had no wish to sleep. "If you had come to the ball," said one, "you would not have been bored, I can tell you. A most beautiful princess came, the most beautiful princess anyone could hope to see. She paid us 1,000 courtesies. She gave us oranges and lemons." Cinderella was delighted. What was the name of this princess? They answered, "No one knows. The king's son is desperate. He would give anything to know who she is." At this, Cinderella smiled and said softly, "She was then so beautiful? My goodness, how lucky you are. Would I could see her? Ah, Mademoiselle Jovette, lend me your yellow outfit that you wear for every day." "Really?" said Jovette. "I like that. Lend me clothes to a filthy cinder seat like you. I should be mad." Cinderella expected this snub. She was secretly relieved, for what would she have done if her sister had been willing to lend her her dress? Okay, so here they are bragging about the ball, thinking that she had no idea what was going on, and then they were kind of rubbing it in. Okay, you guys know that. They were rubbing it in to make her feel bad. The next night, the two sisters were off again to the ball, and so was Cinderella, but this time even more splendidly dressed than before. The prince never left her side. All evening he paid her charming compliments. The young miss found this so far from boring that she forgot her godmother's warning. She was horrified to hear the first stroke of midnight before she thought it could be 11 o'clock. She rose and fled as lightly as a doe. That's a female deer. The prince followed her, but he could not overtake her. In her haste, Cinderella dropped one of her glass slippers. The prince gathered it up with the greatest care. Okay, here he is catching her slipper, and here she is running off. Cinderella reached home all out of breath, with neither coach nor footman, and in rags. Nothing was left of her finery but one little slipper, the mate to the one she had lost. The guards at the palace gate were questioned. Had they seen a princess leave? No, they had seen no one but a young woman in rags, and she looked more like a peasant girl than a fine young lady. Okay, so my question was, why didn't she leave until midnight? Remember, Godmother said you must leave before midnight. Okay, and so, yeah, she was so caught up in the events that she lost track of time. Okay, I don't think she did it on purpose. I think she just was so caught up in the activities that were going on. Kind of like when we get involved with something and then we lose track of time and it's like, oh my goodness, it's time to go. Okay, and haste means quickness. Okay, or kind of like a crazy quickness. When the two sisters returned from the ball, Cinderella asked them if they had enjoyed themselves again, and if the beautiful lady had been there. They told her, oh yes, she was there, but at the stroke of midnight she fled from the palace. She dropped one of her little glass slippers, the prettiest in the world. The king's son found it, and he did nothing but gaze at it, all during the rest of the ball. He certainly has fallen head over heels in love with the owner of the slipper. They spoke truly. For a few days after the ball, the king's son had his herald sound throughout the land. Okay, so it's kind of like his assistant. That he would marry her whose foot would fit the little slipper. First they tried it on princesses, then on duchesses, and all the ladies of the court. But it was no use. Okay, so how is he going to find his wife? Yeah, he's checking to see whose foot fits in this slipper. So if another person's foot happens to fit in this slipper, he could perhaps marry the wrong person, couldn't he? They brought it to the two sisters, who did their best to force their feet into the little slipper, but they could not. Cinderella was looking on and recognized her slipper, so she laughingly said, "Let me see if it would fit me." Her stepsisters, burst into shrieks of laughter. "Fit her! Oh, fit Cinderseed!" How they mocked her! But the gentleman who had been sent to try on the slipper looked intently at Cinderella. Finding her beautiful, he said it was no more than right. He had been ordered to try it on all the young ladies. Okay, so they're being rude to her. He had Cinderella sit down, and sliding the slipper on her little foot, he saw that it fitted her perfectly, just as if it was made of wax. The astonishment of her sisters was great, but greater still when Cinderella drew from her pocket the little slipper, which she slipped on her other foot. Then suddenly her godmother appeared. Touching Cinderella's rags with her wand, she changed them into a costume still more magnificent than any she had worn before. Now her stepsisters recognized her. Cinderella was the beautiful personage they had seen at the ball. They threw themselves at her feet and begged forgiveness for all their bad treatment of her. Cinderella asked them to rise, embraced them, and told them she forgave them with all her heart. She begged them to love her always. Okay, so why would they beg forgiveness? They probably are embarrassed about how they had behaved to her, and also they know that she has a kind heart. So, and if she's to marry the prince, that also gives them their royalty. So they might have an alternative reason for apologizing to her. Cinderella was conducted to the young prince, dressed as she was. Okay, so she was brought to him. He found her lovelier than ever, and a few days afterwards married her. Cinderella, who was as good as she was beautiful, gave her sisters a home at the palace, and on the same day married them to two great lords of the court. So she also found them husbands too. So this story is a little different from the Disney story that we're used to. I want you to think about, some of the differences that we had heard. So these are some character traits. I'm not sure if this is actually where I want to be in my slideshow yet. Nope. Okay, here's some vocabulary words that we had discussed. Haughtiest, that means snobby. Okay, we had talked about it. Very snooty, uppity, not too good for anybody. Disposition is the person's way of acting or thinking. Goodness is the quality of being honest and of high character. Okay, Cinderella was considered a good person. Scolded means to be reprimanded, or to be told you're not doing something right, okay? And it's not in a nice manner of being told that way. Twitter is a series of short, high-pitched sounds, okay? And I know you guys are familiar with Twitter, the app. That is why it's represented by birds, okay? The birds twittered in the tree, okay? And paraded is like being displayed while marching around, okay? So if you got something new, a new jacket or something, you might parade around in it because you're proud of your new jacket, okay? Okay, so who, where, was this a fantasy or was there magic? Yes, there was. We're going to be talking about these more as we go through the week, okay, and how is my character as a person. So these are some character traits. Are you a mean person? Are you a nice person? Are you sad? Okay, and these are other words that could mean the same thing. Are you a confident person? Are you nervous? Are you a positive person? Upbeat? Or are you negative? Are you, kind of down all the time or mean? And do you do a lot or does very little? Are you active or are you boring or lazy? Okay. And on Wednesday, you're going to receive a packet that has this sheet in it, okay? So these are character traits cart. So adjective, dependable, noun, Cinderella. So we're describing Cinderella. And we can say that she cleaned the house. And how did she do it? She did it well, okay? It means we could depend on her. Kind-hearted, again, we're describing Cinderella. And it's how she helped her sisters, okay, as mean as they were. She helped them willingly, okay? She didn't have to be told to help them. Okay, and that is all we are going to discuss today, okay?